Hi, welcome to the presentation on how we built our field services business on QuickBase Mobile. Mobile phone only required. In today's session, it's a recorded session, but you do have the ability to ask questions during the session, and there will be chat available if you have any questions or any technical issues. As well, at the end of the session, there will be a live Q&A with myself. Today's agenda: QuickBase mobile app forms are simple, almost too simple. If you're familiar with what they look like, you know what I mean. But I'm going to talk about how we, Run Energy, leverage the simplicity to successfully implement QuickBase Mobile into its field service business in 60 days. Following is a presentation of how we did it and how you could implement a similar strategy yourself. Run Energy, just a bit of background, is a company that offers maintenance and operations and technical services to the wind industry. And currently we have over 250 technicians working across 40 wind farms throughout the US. And here is a map from the maps in QuickBase to show you where our locations are, because we manage everything within QuickBase, including our jobs locations. My name is Greig. I'm the Group Technical and IT Manager for Run Energy. And what experience I bring to the table in building a field services on the mobile app. One, I bring 20 years of experience in building business processes in field service industries. I have just over 6 years building QuickBase apps. And I have 0 years with Java, JSON, or any type of coding programming platform at all. Basically, I'm what you would call a citizen developer. So our existing system, just to give you a bit of background to why we moved to the mobile version, we had an existing system with 4 different platforms. We had a third-party form app, which was what we used in the field. Technicians had installed on their devices. We used QuickBase, where a completed form would go to and some data would be stored. We used Workato to push QuickBase data into the format for things like choosing your name, or the job that you're working on, which is all managed in QuickBase. So we made it available in the format that way. And then we use Zapier to pull data from the form as forms were completed, including the PDF of the form, to be sent back into QuickBase. At the time we implemented it, sounded pretty good because it worked, kind of. But lots of issues started to appear. One, lots of cooks, apps, teams in the kitchen. Lots of form design effort. Ironically, we designed all the forms in things like Word, Excel, and then we would PDF them and build an electronic form around them. Lots of support and problem solving. When a form didn't appear in QuickBase, where did we go? We had to go to the third-party app. We had to go to Workato sometimes. We had to go to Zapier. So it became a very complicated problem-solving effort every time there was an issue with a form. And ultimately, probably what drove us is the poor reliability. Because you were transferring data between all these different platforms, reliability became the biggest issue, where forms weren't just getting there, so people were having to resubmit forms multiple times. And then it just became a bit too hard to manage. So when the new mobile app became available from QuickBase, we had a look at it. And obviously sold on the idea it's all in one platform. When you complete a form on the mobile app, it's a completed form in QuickBase. One thing about the mobile app, there's basically no design effort when it comes to designing a form. It's pretty basic. One great thing was that there's only going to be one app, QuickBase, and one team, whoever designs the administrators of QuickBase in the kitchen. Rapid deployment. To me, this is kind of one of QuickBase's strengths. You could, as soon as you made it available, it was available for everyone. So it's very quick to do. Minimal support and problem solving, because if there's an issue, it's just relating to QuickBase. So we're not having to go to all these different platforms to try and find the issue. And reliability is great, as in, once that tech completes the form, it's in QuickBase. We're not having to try and wait for it to appear in the existing system like we always had to, sometimes up to 5-10 minutes, even an hour. There was none of those delays. It was all instant. Oh. Okay, so let's have a look at what the existing system form used to look like. A lot of colors, a lot of design effort to lay fields out to look like this. Where QuickBase, pretty simple. It's just one column, very simple design. I'll explain a bit more about it. One thing we found out by looking at the simple way that QuickBase Mobile lays out its forms, we thought, well, let's have an opportunity to remove what we call unnecessary fields. What data do we really need to get from the field? So it was an opportunity to do that. So we found less is more on that. And then one big difference we noticed just in terms of using it, the existing system, because you would have to use the zoom in and out feature on the phone a lot to be able to see the fields in the form, you're always using two hands. Where we found with the QuickBase system, it's a lot of one hand scrolling up and down. I mean, when you're typing, yes, you would have to use two hands, but then again, we started to build forms with less typing and more checkboxes. So some of our forms you complete by just using one hand scrolling up and down the form. So this is where we talk about leveraging the simplicity to your advantage. So what we did in 7 days, we built 21 new forms into a QuickBase app. Now, in this case, we call a form really is a table because we built a form per table. The forms vary from whether it's a service report, an inspection report, an expense report, a timesheet, forms like that. So we built them in 7 days because this is what you can do in QuickBase very quickly. We then rolled it out to 4 technicians for 14 days just to test it with them to make sure it's working fine, get their feedback on the usability. And once we felt confident that things were working well, we then rolled it out within a 30-day period to all our 250 technicians. They already had existing mobile apps, so all they had to do was download the QuickBase app and then sign in, and there it was available on their system. So that happened in less than 30 days. So to get an idea of that timeline, this is a chart from QuickBase showing the source of where our form data was coming from. The green and the yellow basically represents the existing system. And you can see, and this is the date in the middle is December 2019 when we started to test with our 4 technicians. And you can see how we pretty much were able to roll it out into January 2020. There was some layover where people were using the existing app, but we gave them like a 30-day period to turn everything off. And once we had, we were able to get it what we call the purple zone, which is basically everything was completed in the QuickBase mobile app form, completed within that 30-day period. So it was a very rapid transition from the existing to the new system, which we were very happy with. Now, I've been talking about it. Let's just talk a bit about the app structure. So what we did, we designed a QuickBase form app. So it's one app. And this is what this app looks like when you log on your phone. So as I mentioned before, a table is equal to a form. So you can see the blue buttons actually represent the different forms, but they actually represent the tables that you click onto and you're completing a form on that table. Navigation we found is via the dashboard. So you put all your dashboard buttons for each form that you need to complete. And this is how people access those forms. We use the output for data input only. Basically, we want people to input data and we're not using it to run reports. However, we did use some very limited reports and we highlighted those. If you look at the screen there, it's green buttons where you can look at some basic reporting. For example, my current open scheduled work orders or how many hours I've entered in the today for timesheet entries or how many per diems have I claimed. Very basic stuff because the reporting in the QuickBase mobile app is very limiting. So let's keep it simple for our users. So just to show you how the whole structure works, this is our existing system. We have the asset and we have many apps. So this is just one of our many apps. We have, for example, an asset app with all our equipment. We then use the QuickBase mobile app, QuickBase sync feature to sync that equipment list into the mobile app. So we now have a data source for equipment lists. This then becomes available to a form, in this case, an equipment request form. So when you go to that equipment request form, you're choosing from an equipment list, which has been synced in by QuickBase. When you complete that form, an action occurs on the QuickBase app, and that action then sends, the equipment request back into the asset app to an existing table we already had, and that then connects back to the equipment list. So that's kind of the data structure. So the black represents the process, which is getting the data from the existing app into the new form app, and the form app is the blue, so that's the new. So basically the new processes we had to add to make it work with the existing system was a sync into the equipment list. When a form request is completed, an action occurs. You could also use an automation, but we tended to prefer actions because they're much easier to create specifically on a table, whereas an automation, you got to go, it's a bit more complicated to make it. So we found actions are much more simpler to do. So that's kind of the app flow and data structure. So in terms of form design, we kind of leverage the fact that it's a single column form. So there is no design effort. Things are just listed going down. There's no branding. So you don't have to worry about putting a company logo or anything. Just stick with the QuickBase colors, and you can see you can flip between the different types of colors. So we use the tabs feature in forms to be able to structure the form. So where it says, for example, work order status and it's got a purple underline, that's actually just a tab in a QuickBase form. And we found when you look at it on the mobile app, it actually breaks up the form quite nicely. So we use tabs, not sections, to be able to break up the form into a more logical sense. We then included in-forms instructions, and this is an example of one where we are getting people to inspect something, and we've actually put images into the form so they know where to go to look for that particular thing they need to inspect. And this is just using a little bit of HTML in the form. So we found that this was very useful to be able to do this, provided a little bit of instruction. And then we use conditional values to filter that reduce the size of drop-down list. So the example I hear is like you choose a job number. When you choose that job number, then the turbine number you're choosing is only going to be related to that job number. So that keeps the list of the in the turbine numbers down to more manageable, maybe up to 100, rather than potentially could be thousands. So we used a lot of conditional filters. And then wherever possible, we always encourage people to take photos. So we actually have photo attachments to all our forms, because we always found a picture tells 1,000 words. So where possible, take a photo and attach it. And you can use the photo on your camera, and it's very seamless when you go to the attachment field to take the photo. So one thing we did try to do was avoid inputting child data from a parent form. So you can see there, I've got a button, and that's where if you're going to add a record to this parent record, you would hit it, and then it'll take you to another form. You save it, and it'll take you back to this form. And we found that doing that in the field on this mobile app was just going to complicate the process. So we avoided these as much as possible. It doesn't mean you don't use them, but we found just it was worth not using them when you're able to avoid them. So instead, what we did, a bit of text here, we built the parent form ability equivalent to create child records. So for example, if you're doing a timesheet, what you can do in the form is choose, say, up to 5 technicians, because we actually do, crew leads do service reports for the timesheets for the technicians, so they can choose up to 5 different names. Here's an example here. And by doing that, you then can create the related child records when you save the form, and you can use that during an action or an automation. So you're not having to go back and forth between add record, complete that record, go back to the parent form, because everything like the date, the job number, the location is going to be the same for each of those records. So all you want to do is put the name, and in this case, if you're doing a per diem, you can check a per diem, or if you're putting hours, you can assign the hours for that service report to all the technicians, because they're all working the same hours. So we found this a very good way to be able to streamline data entry in the field, and then you just use the actions and automations to create the record. So another thing we found is, where possible, make everything a checkbox. And the philosophy is, if it's checked, it's okay. If it's not checked, it's not okay. And we have a lot of inspections that we do, and where basically people are walking around looking at something, and we just get them to check it if it's okay. If it's unchecked, it's not okay. And then what we've done is, at the end of these forms where we've got a lot of checklists, we communicate the errors back to the user to say, by what you've completed so far, these things look like they're not okay. So that became an opportunity, because people do sometimes forget to check something, is to remind them to go back up and check that that is okay. And then what we would do is, we would say to people, use notes to type commentary about things that are not okay. So don't write a note if it's okay. The fact you've checked it is okay. You don't have to write anything. But if it's not okay, then you can write some notes as well. So therefore, trying to reduce the requirement for people to type too much on a mobile device. And then wherever possible, which we've done, we've created every form, we create the URL to the form. So you could then email that form link to someone, and if they click on it, it'll take them to the form. So that was a very good way of being able to almost replace the creation of a PDF file and setting it as an attachment to someone. You just create a link to the form itself, and then you can send that link to someone, and then they click on it, it takes them to that form. And then two kind of significant benefits we found from this system. One is error reduction. We found that, and this is largely related to all the reliability issues, we reduced our errors down significantly in terms of creating duplicate forms, and then also not filling out forms correctly because they're just a bit too complicated. So we found there's a big benefit in error reduction. And then probably the best thing that QuickBase does is rapid deployment. We're able to build this system very rapidly and deploy it. And then as we add new forms, we can do them instantly. So an example of the error reduction is this chart here, which shows you the number of errors that are occurring across our forms. We have lots of forms we're collecting over the last year. And then just highlighting those last 3 months as the reduction we had by just completing forms in the QuickBase mobile app. So that was a significant reduction in time for the people administrating those forms, i.e. making sure people have completed them, because then they don't have to chase up, for example, when people don't send records and they have to ask them to do it again. And that's what we consider a bit of an error, is having to resend in forms. So it just saves a lot of admin time, as well as people supporting the system like myself having to trying to work out where all the problems are. And then on the rapid deployment, you can implement a new form in minutes. And we actually found it another way to broadcast information to a field workforce as well. So for example, with what everyone's going through with the coronavirus, we were able to get our field techs to complete a survey, a questionnaire, which they needed to complete for being able to work out in the field. We're able to deploy a new questionnaire within like 10 minutes, and we're even able to put information like this: can you please complete this straight away, because everyone's going to use this form to complete daily service reports and expense reports, inspections, whatever. So there's a great platform to be able to get people to do that. So we were able to deploy this, and then everyone was able to complete this, because this was urgent at the time and still is, was able to complete this questionnaire within a day. And then if we do it, we've done a couple of updates to this questionnaire. So every time we do an update, we broadcast it. And this is the questionnaire. It's pretty simple, but basically it's just some questions about where you've been and your exposure. But this is something that was able to deploy rapidly and then get everyone to complete within a very timely manner. So this is a great feature for me from the form app, is the ability to deploy things rapidly and get people to complete them. So some of the deployment items that I'll kind of summarize with was, one, we found with this system that training was relatively minimal effort, because the forms are pretty simple looking, and with some informal instruction, people should be able to follow them. So what we actually ended up doing was just train the supervisors, and they're the ones that kind of tend to spend time with the technician. So we make sure the supervisors are familiar with the system, and therefore we don't have to train every technician in the system, when you're implementing a new system. one thing we did is we took feedback from users on board, and people, particularly when you change something, people always come back with questions and things that they like it to do, or the things that they don't like what it does. What we tended to do as much as possible is say thank you, but we're sticking with the current plan, and we will make sure we'll add that to a version 2. So we kind of made sure we're pretty confident what we needed people to do in a version 1, so we stuck with that. And then also we found that people, when you make changes like this, some people take a while to adjust, and they go, oh, I don't like this, I don't want to do it, I want to do it the old way, or I want the old system had this. And what you do is you just take it on board, you don't do anything, just give them at least a month to get used to it. And you find a lot of the issues that they initially have just disappear, because once they've adjusted to the new system, it's fine. We use the limited user license, which is basically the users only need to access the one app. So because of that, we can then manage the users in the app. So the way you would add a user is you just use the input users feature in the app. And what's good about that then is that a QuickBase administrator doesn't need to manage that. You put that on to someone else who manages the team, and then they can just import users in via their email address. And when they get imported the users in, they get sent an email to be able to sign up and create a password themselves. So you're not having to manage those users in your more traditional sense through groups. And you're basically just adding individual users to the app and assigning them to a role. And then we also allow them to remove access. So when someone leaves, they can actually remove access by deleting that user out the app. Now, they still need to be deleted out of the system, but that doesn't need to happen straight away, because once they've been deleted out of their app, they've only got one app access, so they can't log in to do anything in any other apps. And then we can just remove them from the system the more traditional way at a later date. One thing what's great about this system is that basically the QuickBase administrator is the person who designs the form. So you're not getting people designing, you're not getting designing by like committee, which is what we had in the existing system, because someone would do something up in a Word or an Excel document and say, here you go, this is what I want it to look like. Now it's like, no, this is what it's going to look like. I mean, we've got pretty good experience understanding what forms we need, and we use user feedback to just lay out the form, but basically we're avoiding design by committee. There's an offline mode for QuickBase, and we have early access to that, and we thought it was actually going to be an essential part of being able to implement the system, particularly with wind farms, because they are located in remote areas. And we thought internet access was going to be an issue. And we found it was not required as much as we expected. Over 90+% complete their forms where they can. And if they can't, the extreme example for us is they just literally drive down the road and complete a form a little bit further down the road. Not that we don't want the offline version, and we're still currently testing it with QuickBase. Found a couple of issues which QuickBase are working on, but we actually found this wasn't essential, but I still think it's going to be an important part of any field service strategy with the mobile app. And I think you're going to like it when the system's alive. So we continue to work with QuickBase on implementing a successful offline system. Now, I've talked about it, so I thought now would be a good opportunity to actually show you what the mobile app looks like on my phone. So I'm just going to do a quick screen mirroring from my phone to the laptop. Okay, just got to exit out the presentation for a second. All right, so here we are. So I'm just going to log on to the format here. So this is the format. So this is what technicians in the field see. So you've already seen a bunch of screenshots from that. The most important form for us is our service report. So that's right at the top of the list. And you know, you can see here, you know, pretty simple in terms of how it's laid out. And this is where we talk about putting some instructions in. We've implemented some new changes recently. So we tend to put when we do something new, for example, choosing a turbine number on a job, we implemented these step instructions. And once people get familiar with that, we'll probably end up removing that text. But this is kind of a way we've worked out to make sure people know what to do correctly, by just putting some instructions in like this. Now, this is an example here where you choose people's names in the form, and because there's crew all working at the same start and end time, because they're all working at crew, if I choose up to 5 names, choose the same start and end time, when I save this record, it will then create a timesheet for everyone in our timesheet system. So this is where I talk about the parent-child relationship. You're not actually clicking on add button to create it. But we found this a very much easier for people in the field to use. So this is where you can use the automations and actions to your advantage. Now, an example of these inspection forms. So we do a lot of inspections. So here's like a vehicle inspection. So this is where we talk about using the camera on your phone. For example, we like people to take photos of their fuel cards whenever they do an inspection. Normally they're doing an inspection just show you a drop-down list here, and you can see if you're going to choose a specific truck. And then you can take a photo of the fuel card using I'm just going to take a photo of I'll take a photo of my laptop, but I won't do that now. Then you save that photo there, you choose your name, choose the location, the mileage, and then as you're scrolling through, you're walking around a vehicle and you're basically clicking things that they're okay. And if you leave something unchecked, then it's going to be marked as not okay at the end. So I'm not going to go through, there's quite a few items here, so I'm just going to go right to the end of this form here, and you can see this fault report where it kind of lists all the stuff that I haven't checked yet, and then I could hit save and add, or go, oops, I missed that, I need to go back up to recomplete those. So that's how we use, we do a lot of checklists like this, and we find that it saves the technicians a lot of time, because if you did, for example, a yes, no, not applicable field, you've got to click on that field, drop down, and be able to, so it just slows it down by doing that. As well, I talked about how you can use this as a bit of a broadcasting. We actually got links now to company documents. These are just PDF files, but if you can click on these, for example, I guess we're in COVID, here's a document that we provided, guidelines for our employees. It's a PDF file, but you can now access it on the mobile app using, just buttons that you put on the dashboard. And then this is the hours report and the PPE inspections. And then we've added some useful, if you're working in the workshop, when you're returning a tool, you can click on this, so it creates an automatic thing. And then we also enable users using the right down to the bottom, where you can actually got a problem, you can raise a new tech support case with the tech support, so you can actually raise it within the app. So there's a whole bunch of other things you can leverage apart from just completing forms by using this mobile app platform. Anyway, I think that's it for now. Thanks very much for your time. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things. You can review this session. A link will be posted in the chat after it's been finished. And then finally, Q&A starts now. So feel free to start asking questions. Thanks. Bye.